Cool. Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, fans.
It's so nice to be doing this again after a couple of months. I think it's been since we talked about Pride and Prejudice. So yeah, this is the what month was this book meant to be for? October.
Sorry, I'm in a silly mood today.
This is the discussion of the October book for the I Should Have Read That Book Club, and the book for October was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which I don't have a copy of with me, so Charlotte.
I'm at my mum's. I'm using any opportunity to show off this glorious, beautiful 10th anniversary.
Yeah, I want to get that now. I'm definitely
the only thing I'm sad about is I ordered it the day that they announced it, but I was still too late to get the signed copies. But it's fine. It's beautiful. It's shiny. I love it.
So pretty. Yeah, I need to. I think that might be one for the Christmas list.
It is pretty, but
yeah.
You're just there like, oh, it's a good job. You're pretty.
Yeah,
that's you to the book, not me to you. Don't worry. Not that mean.
Oh dear, I know. I was like, I feel like I need to make an announcement because I feel like people need to know that I DNF'd it while I'm also discussing it because I don't want.
So, what point were you at when you DNF'd?
They were. The war was about to happen. They were like camped outside, and the other people kept trying to get like slave girls, and they were kind of like stealing them. And I've forgotten her name. That was teaching them.
Briseis.
Yes.
I'm never 100% sure on whether I've got the right pronunciation. I feel like, excuse me, I hear different people say different things, so I kind of chop and change. So like I've heard Patroclus and Patroclus and Briseis and Briseis.
I was pronouncing it correctly. Yes.
What was that? Wrong. Which one?
Patroclus, or whatever his name is.
I say Patroclus, but I have heard people Patroclus. I'm like, oh, okay.
I know, because
at least Achilles is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting discussion, I think, because we had the two like extremes of opinions on it.
I had my popcorn ready for this discussion. That'll be great.
Yeah. So obviously Shannon DNF'd it, as she said, and I think was it a 5-star for you as well, Charlotte?
It's like, for me, it's one of my top 10 books.
Yeah.
Which is generally it's not as high as Pride and Prejudice, but it's still like very firmly lodged in my heart. So
yeah, and I gave it a star as well, which was completely unexpected. And I think that's probably why I ended up giving it a higher rating, because I didn't think that I was going to like it, and I really did. But I think some of the questions, especially one of the ones later, will be like an interesting one, and it might be a bit more into like why Shannon ended up DNFing it.
Yeah,
it is lovely though when you have a surprise 5-star.
Yeah,
and you kind of like okay, and especially when it's a hike book, and you kind of like, really, this thing going to be the thing? No, I think it should be good fun.
Cool. So shall we start on the questions? I'll just do them in the order that was in the thing that I sent to you. So the first question that I had was, which relationships did you like the most, or which ones interested you the most? Because obviously, like, the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus is like the core, I would say, of the book, but then there are lots of other relationships in it as well. So yeah, I don't know.
That was the saving grace for me. I've got to say, out of all of the things I didn't like about the book, the thing that I did like the most was their relationship. And I really liked the way it was done. And right from the beginning, I feel like you can feel the chemistry that is there, and like I feel like it was just written and done really well. If that makes sense. So I didn't really like any of the other characters in the books or the other relationships, so I would have to say that. But that is the one thing that I definitely really did like about the book. So.
Yeah, I think I would say the same. It is my favorite of the relationships within. I think because it is the focal point, like this is what the book is. It's kind of easy for other relationships to get a bit drowned out. So I was trying to think of like the other like key relationships. So obviously you've got Briseis and Patroclus.
Yeah.
They, like, towards the end of the book have this very, very deep connection, which never actually goes into romantic, even though it's hinted that she might be interested, but she does respect that that's not what he wants. And there's just like a lot of love there, and it's like at a level that Achilles doesn't really get it, and he's just kind of like, who is this girl? What's going on? Why? So I do really like that relationship. I think the relationship between Achilles and Thetis, his mother, is a really interesting one. But because we don't get much of seeing them, we don't really see them two together at all. It's an interesting one because of what you don't see.
Yeah, that was one of the relationships, or just Thetis, like in general, that really interested me. Because one of the questions that I saw like other people talking about when I was looking for questions to talk about today was about like why Thetis like really hated Patroclus so much, and why you thought that might be. And I thought that maybe that could be something to do with like the whole like prophecy and stuff, and how she does actually really care about her son, and like maybe she knew that he was going to die in the end, like not how you might initially expect him to die. It was going to be like because of like Patroclus, essentially.
Yeah. Because there's the line, which, to be honest with you, I've read this book like 4 or 5 times at this point, and it only took this reading for me to actually get that the prophecy line that is the best of the Myrmidons, it's when the best of the Myrmidons dies, that's going to be the cue that Achilles is going to die soon.
Yeah.
Or the war will be turned by the best of the Myrmidons dying. It took me this read to realize that that's Patroclus. I don't know how it took me that long to work that out. I think it's just a line that completely like flew past me, and I didn't really dwell on it. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not very bright, am I? So she knows that that is who he is, and she knows that Patroclus dying and is going to set off Achilles, and that will set off his death. So she doesn't want him to be so. I think she thinks that if she gets in the way of the relationship, then she can somehow circumvent that, and so he won't be as affected as he ends up being by Patroclus's death, and then hopefully he'll still be able to. He might survive and then become a god. But she knows that that's kind of a losing battle.
Yeah, that's definitely how I sort of saw it as well. When I thought about it, like when I was actually reading it, I think I was like really just like, oh, what is she doing? Like, I don't know what. But then, when I read that question, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. But like, my favorite relationship was like Achilles and Patroclus. I think that's probably most people's. But I really like Briseis as well. I thought their dynamic was really
Who else is there really? Because you have a couple of like father-son relationships, but they're not really.
Yeah, and I guess the mentor. I can't remember what his name was though.
I love Chiron.
Yeah,
I love him.
Yeah, he's so cute.
Because I love him so much, that was the only thing that was really keeping me through reading the Percy Jackson books for as long as I did read them, was because I knew that I liked him from this. I was like, okay. No, I really like him, and I wish he was in more of it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, well, the next question was about like any scenes or moments, again, that was either a favorite or one that left an impression. I thought we could talk about this because I think we've basically had this question for like all of the books that we've done for the book club, so I thought it might be.
I think it's a good one. It brings out different like discussion points, if that makes sense. I did have one when I was reading it, but it's completely slipped my mind now. But I think I realized the moments I didn't like were the moments where they're separated.
Yeah.
Like Achilles, and that when they're not together, I was like less interested, because obviously my favorite thing about the book was their relationship. So seeing them together were my favorite moments. But yeah, the bit where they're obviously in kind of early on in the book with, I've forgotten his name now, the guy that's like mentoring them.
Chiron.
I like those scenes. Those scenes were nice. Because they felt nice and homey. And then when they had to leave, I was like, no. I feel like it's going to go downhill from here. And the bit just before I DNF'd as well. The bit where they kill someone's daughter to stop the heat.
Right. So is this before they set sail?
Yes. Because it's like really hot, and
will be. I've literally just read a book about this. There are so many. It's the daughter of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, whose name has flown out of my head. I was like, I will get this.
And obviously Achilles thinks that he's going to be married off to her, and then she gets killed as like a sacrifice, and then they realize that was the plan all along, and Achilles like is heartbroken because he thinks that he could have stopped her death, basically.
I have it.
And just seeing how like he reacts to that, I thought was really interesting, especially because they were about to go into war, and then realizing that like, you know, you need to fix up because you're about to go into war and you're going to be expected to kill people and all of this stuff. I thought it was an interesting point to show, like, I don't know, Achilles' emotions more in depth. I don't know. Yeah, it was,
and it's a lot of his innocence as well, because he hasn't really, even though he knows he's a great fighter, he's never actually had to kill anybody, or has never really been near death in the same way as the others. I always find that interesting, his reaction to the sacrifice, really interesting, because his general attitude to women is kind of, he doesn't care. He has no interest. So like Didamia, who he gets married off to, he doesn't care about her at all, and then he doesn't really care about Briseis, just doesn't have any interest in them. So the fact that he was so affected by Iphigenia being killed, I always found that really interesting. I think part of it is just the shock of seeing somebody be killed.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's just it. So impactful scene for me. So I can't. I'll have to find a video. It's a YouTube who they were kind of, it was doing tipsy OTPs, and she basically talks about how much she loves Achilles and Patroclus while a bit tipsy. And she talks about, basically she talks about the scene where they're at Chiron's, and he comes back from talking to Thetis and says, by the way, do you know that my mother can't see us in this cave? And it takes like a beat before they realize what that means. That always makes me laugh, just because I've seen that video so many times, and it does seem very much like, do you know? But no, but I think the one that, so the ending wrecks me every single time I read it. I always think I'm going to go into reading it absolutely fine, and because I've done it before, it won't get me emotional. So Shannon, do you know? Like,
I think I do know, because obviously we all know he dies, and obviously because there's a massive romance in it, I was like, it's clearly going to involve the romance in some way. So I knew there was probably going to be a twist at the end, and and then I kind of read something at the end. So I don't fully know, but obviously everyone talks about the ending and stuff, but I felt like I got to the point where I didn't, as much as I did enjoy reading about their relationship, I didn't care enough, obviously, to continue reading or anything. Because I kind of knew what to expect from the end as well. I wasn't that bothered.
Yeah. Am I right to go into?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So
I might end up reading it or finishing it at some point, maybe knowing what happens. That might help me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So this is why it wrecks me. So we know. Because we know the myth that Patroclus goes to fight dressed in Achilles' armor because Achilles is still refusing to actually fight, and he ends up being he promises that he's not going to actually fight, but he ends up being overpowered and is killed by Hector. So then Achilles gets mad, goes to Hector, kills Hector, parades Hector's body around. That's basically the end of the Iliad story. And then Achilles ends up being killed by Paris, both dead. And so the ending of Song of Achilles is they're wrapping up the Trojan War, and the decision is about whether or not Achilles and Patroclus are going to be buried together, have their ashes buried together. And pretty much everybody, because everybody is... So, sorry, I missed out a crucial thing, which is that Achilles' son comes and is basically... comes to the Trojan War and is a major reason why they end up winning. But he absolutely refuses to let Patroclus be buried with Achilles. And everybody knew what everybody else who was fighting knew what the relationship was, and they're kind of pushing him to let them be buried together. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to be together in the afterlife, which is why I'm starting to tear up. And he's refusing it. Odysseus tries to reason with him, and he still says no. They are about to go off, and Patroclus is basically we're still in Patroclus's perspective, but it's dead. Patroclus, it's his spirit.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he's trying to like speak from beyond the grave to these people to try and urge them to bury him with Achilles. Otherwise, they're not going to be reunited. And what ends up happening right at the end, basically the last page, is Thetis ends up doing it, reuniting them. Right. So it's this final and then the ending is them actually reuniting. And basically at that point, mess. And I have had the audiobook of this on whilst I've been at work, like at the franking machine, trying to deliver books, and I've just been like, so yeah, dead. That last chapter kills me. So that is my memorable bit, just because it makes me weep.
That has actually made me want to read it more, because it's not exactly what I expected. There is a kind of happy ending, because everyone says it's really sad at the end, so I just thought it was going to be like,
it is basically really, really sad until the last page, and then it's like,
I love that.
Oh. So there's and it does get dark, as you'd expect, because it's the war. But that you just have that little bit of hope at the end.
Yeah, I think the whole ending was like definitely one of the like standout bits for me as well. I think I always knew that his son was gonna like appear again at some point in it, because I did not know like this story at all before going into it. Like I didn't know really anything about like the Iliad or any of like the myths or anything. I feel like for some reason I just have like no knowledge. I don't know, I just wasn't taught it when I was younger. So I sort of knew that the son was gonna like be a part, I assumed, but I didn't know like what role he was gonna play, and I just found myself being like, I hate you so much.
Yeah.
So did you find yourself, Shannon, hating like Agamemnon, Thetis, any of those characters?
Yeah, so Thetis kind of like really was annoying me, just because I thought, like, I didn't realize the reason why, and also I think maybe going back and reading it from the beginning, knowing that the reason why she was so against their relationship wasn't because like they were gay, it was because of like how Achilles ends up dying. That again will annoy me less, but the fact that she was always there and she was always trying to be annoying did get on my nerves quite a bit.
No, I was going to say, basically, take the anger and the frustration that you have with that, and then like triple it for Achilles' son.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the level of like, oh my God, you are the worst human, and I hate you, and I want you to leave.
It's not just like how he treats like Achilles and Patroclus, it's the whole thing with Briseis as well. Like that woman.
I couldn't even go into that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know whether to say what happened.
No, I know.
I'm reading it now, but yeah, something happens, and I was literally like, I don't know. I was just like,
and it kind of, I think also because I've read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, and that focuses on Briseis. She is like the focal character of that. And she I think she is in the sequel, The Women of Troy. So obviously it has a different ending.
Yeah.
To what Madeline Miller does in the Song of Achilles for her. So I every single time I get to that bit, I'm surprised, even though I've read it before, because I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
That's what she did.
I'll have to look up those books because she was one of my favorite characters or like one of like the standout characters in it, and just like I felt like I wanted to know more about her story, and I don't think it would have fitted in this book, but I really would like to know more. So
yeah, if you are interested in her as a character, then it's a good one. It's a good one to go down.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, I also just want to throw because I don't think we've got a favorite character section. So I've spoken about Chiron because I love him. I want to ask your opinions on Odysseus in this, because Odysseus is probably my favorite character in like Greek myth, but I hear really polarizing things about him in this book, and because I like him as a character already, I like him in this, but I know people hate him and find him just.
Is he the one? Oh, I've forgotten. But a lot of like the gods or the big people, not really, the big myth people that were in it, especially the men from the beginning, I was just irritated by all of them. So, just because of like what they said and stuff, and I would just be like, oh, here we go again. Or they would say something, like especially about Achilles and Patroclus and their relationship, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I like this, and then in the next breath say something really either sexist or ridiculous, and I would just be like, oh, there you go, now I'm done now.
Yeah, he kind of sits on that like middle, because so Odysseus in the book, he'll be most recognizable. He's the one who discovers Patroclus and Achilles when they're hiding in Skyros.
Okay.
So he kind of tricks them into revealing themselves, and that's his entire character. That's his entire character throughout Greek myth. He's very tricky, and he comes up with the plans. Like he's quite manipulative, and he's quite full of himself because he knows that he's very shrewd and intelligent, and that's him throughout Greek myth. And I kind of love that about him, is that he is that tricky. But no, he does make comments about like, oh, I hear you two even sleep in the same bed sometimes. I hear young boys often do that. I don't know if you're going to continue with that for the rest of the day. So I think maybe it's stuff like that people don't like about him, but I don't think he's terrible in this in the way that some of the other characters are. Like, I hate Agamemnon. Say that. Agamemnon. And there are other people I don't really like, but I think he's like, he's a bit ambiguous, which I quite like.
When he turned up and did his like trickery thing, I was like, oh, like I don't dislike this person. They're an interesting character, but I don't find a massive dislike for them. I think as well, because I'm in that in between where I know names of people, but I'm not that clued up to know who they all are, confused me, because then reading it, because I knew the names, I kind of felt like I should have known who these people were, and that's why I felt like I was lacking something. Yeah, it was a bit weird.
Yeah, I don't really feel like I had a strong opinion on him. But it is him. Is it him at the end that is?
So he's trying to convince the son, whose name I always forget because I don't like him. He's like trying to do the last ditch attempt to get them buried.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
like that. I liked that at the end, and when he was like, "Let it be known that I tried," sort of thing.
Mm.
But I don't feel like, other than that, yeah, I didn't really have any strong opinions. But like Shannon, I feel like I should know. I did actually do the Iliad, not the Iliad, the Odyssey at uni, and I feel like I should know.
Okay.
But I literally don't remember a single thing
It's
about it.
it's an interesting one, really, because like we did the Odyssey for my A levels, but A levels you have like months and months with a book, whereas uni you have a week. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the first thing in first year or something. So
Yeah,
So for me,
I'm not going to remember that.
So for me with Odysseus, I'm just like, I have spent so much time with this man. I really like this man. I have opinion. No, that is absolutely fair enough. I just wanted to see gauge what the temperature was.
Yeah,
because I know some people hate him in this. So
no, then I didn't feel like I hated Thetis more, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I also feel like I wasn't really focusing that much on a lot of the side characters, because I was just wanting to know what was like going to happen with like the main, like the relationship and stuff. So
our boys.
yeah, I feel like I need to reread it, which I want to do at some point. And then I feel like I'll be able to like focus more on like what the other characters do, because I definitely feel like some of the like men blended together a lot for me. So, but I didn't really mind that because it wasn't like them that I was like reading it for. So it would be cool to reread it and see, like, take that in a bit more. Cool. Well, the next thing that I had for discussing was the fact that there's like, first of all, like foreshadowing in the book quite a bit, and also the fact that the book is a story that like a lot of people are already well acquainted with. So the question was, what's the point of telling a story that people already know the ending of, and what our sort of like thoughts were on that? I know we've talked a little bit about how familiar, or like what aspects of it we were already familiar with, and I guess like if that impacted our experiences or enjoyment of it as well.
it's a weird one for me, this question, because obviously I do see the point in retelling the stories, especially from a perspective like this that Madeline Miller has like done something really amazing with, I think, with the retelling of like such a well-known story. But I think one of the biggest drawbacks for me while I was reading it was knowing how the story was going to end.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can't really comment because it was one of the drawbacks for me. It's a bit strange.
Because I find it interesting, because something I always notice about myself is that I'm more likely to like a book that is a retelling because I know what the ending is, and I think it's a lazy part of my brain that is like, I don't want to have to do the plot work. I think because I like character more than I like plot. So something like this really works for me, because my brain can kind of be like, I know, I can go on autopilot, and I can just focus in on the characters and be like, yes, what are you doing new with this? But where was I going with that? I have no idea. No, I really like the fact that we're retreading it, but looking at it differently. And I think, I don't know, I feel like I wish I could kind of go back to when it first came out in 2011, because I feel like the conversation about Achilles and Patroclus, because it's been like a big internet thing, or at least like where I go on the internet, it's a big thing. People just, you say Achilles and you're like, oh, and Patroclus, who is definitely his lover. Whereas I feel like maybe 2011, it would be more of a, I don't want to say shocking thing, but I feel like that wasn't really the conversation that was being had, was what, because I know that it's been like a big debate for like centuries about what was their relationship. But I think so many people, so because in the Iliad, it is basically like Homer doesn't say whether or not they were. I think there are hints, but he doesn't come down on they were lovers, they were not. And then you've got like centuries of like all of like the ancient Greek plays depicted them explicitly as lovers. And I think
I did not know this.
Yeah. So Shakespeare kind of hints that they were lovers, but nobody wants to come really firmly down on the side of it. Yeah. And then others who are like, no, they were just very good friends. And it's like, yes, very good friends who canonically in the myth want to be buried together with their ashes mixed together so that they can be together for all eternity. That is some great, absolutely a thing that straight men would say about their best girl.
Okay, I thought that it was just Madeline Miller being like, oh, I'm just going to put this really interesting twist on. I did not know that. Okay, right. I feel like doing research on the book and the backstory of it would have been better for me going into it. Because now I'm like, now I know all these things. I'm like, yes.
Well, there was a big thing about in the movie Troy. They have Achilles played by Brad Pitt, and I don't know who plays Patroclus, but they say that he's his cousin, which seemed like a very like in 2004 to be a very big like no homo. These are definitely not together because they're cousins. How dare you say such a thing? And everybody else who does think that they were together and just like they were not cousins. They were definitely not cousins. I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know. I feel like in 2011 maybe it would have been like oh, this is a take I haven't heard for a while or ever. Yeah. Whereas I don't know if it was different to how we'd receive it now. I don't know what I'm saying.
One of the things that I did think of again that I was going to say, but now it makes more sense because there is like reason behind it. But I kind of the reason why as well I didn't like it was because I kind of thought, okay, so Madeline Miller is doing this thing where she's making them like lovers and doing this really amazing relationship when you know that, well, for me, I knew that one of them was going to die at the end. Mm-hmm. So it kind of felt really pointless. But now, knowing that there is like truth in the original myths where this has been taken from, it now in my head is more of a proper myth retelling. If that makes sense. It feels more...
Did it feel kind of a bit like is it kill your gaze, the trope where it's like if there's
bury your gaze.
Then thank you. What did I say kill?
Yeah. Same thing.
Don't do that. You know what I mean? The trope. If they are a couple, one of them has to be dead by the end of it. Did it feel a bit like that?
Yeah, like kind of. So it all felt a bit kind of pointless to me because I was just a bit like, yeah, this is great and it's my favorite part of it, but because I know the ending, which I know you can't change because that's what happens, but because now more of it is actually real, it makes more sense. I'm sold now.
It's like attrition, more of attrition gets in. Like, like I will make you like this. No, yeah, there has been like this big debate since the whole Trojan War story was told of like because Achilles' reaction to him dying seemed so like a lot that it just put him into like massive rage-fueled killing spree that they were just like, okay, so how close were they? Because this seems really weird if he's just like a random man-at-arms who happened to be in his camp. So now,
I feel it's made me definitely want to look into more of just other Greek myths or just Greek myths in general, because like the whole, I guess the question about it being a retelling, my experience is quite different because as I said, like I hardly knew anything going in, so I didn't have that experience of, I mean, I could sort of guess what was going to happen from pretty early on. I assumed that at least one of them was going to end up dead, but I wasn't reading it thinking like, oh, I know this character and I know that, you know, this is definitely going to happen. So I think it's going to be like almost the reverse for me in the sense that now I really want to like learn more about all these characters and like read other sort of similar retellings as well. So
I know, like,
It makes me happy.
Yeah, I think it's made me realise that, because I read Wait by Jeanette Winterson literally straight after finishing Jean's Greek myths book, and that's like my first eye-opening to the myths and stuff. So I was it was in my head already what was going on with the characters. So I think maybe before I read more Greek myths, like retellings, I want to know more about the actual original myths themselves, which is interesting. I know that now, so I feel like that's good going into things. Just do a little catch up first.
No, I feel like for me it was because I knew like bits and pieces of the myth when I first read Song of Achilles, so things were familiar to me, but it was mainly like, I really know who Odysseus is. Check, I have that. I know generally what happens kind of in the Trojan War. But I feel like every time I've come back to it, I've read like something else. So that's really helped. And then there have been bits that Song of Achilles has fleshed out for me that when I come back to it in other stuff, I'm like, that's like this thing.
Yeah.
So I think it is a really good one to go back to reread and go back to when you have, like, if you did want to go to another Greek myth retelling, or if you wanted to do like, because I really recommend like Stephen Fry's his trilogy of myth retellings. They're really good.
Yeah.
For like fleshing out bits and pieces, where, because I feel like there's so much in those myths. There's so much to go through.
Yeah, and I guess, like, with the question of like, what's the point of telling us that people already know? I mean, I think it just makes it like so much more accessible, because I personally would probably never have bothered with, like, now I'm out of uni and stuff, I haven't read the Iliad at uni. I would not have like gone out of my way to read that now, and like similarly other things. So I think I just think it's good to have like stories like this that have been rewritten, retold, and lots of different perspectives as well. I think it really, it doesn't always have to be told in exactly the same way. I think that helps to just you to sort of make up your own mind about what you think happened or didn't happen.
Because there's
I
like
mean, that's
a lot
with,
carry on.
No, I was going to say, even with like translations, like, why do we have so many different translations of these ancient myths? Like, why am I desperately waiting for Doobly? Oh my god, why has her name slipped from my head?
Someone?
No, who did the Odyssey? Emily? Is it Emily Wilson?
Emily Wilson?
I think it's Emily Wilson who just did the Odyssey. I'm like desperately waiting for her Iliad. So I'm not going to read it again until hers comes out, but it's probably going to be years. It's meant to be the same text that's been translated. We still go back to these new translations because there is so much difference from like just one word that you can twist out. Like her translation of the Odyssey is meant to be, the way that she's translated things is meant to be much more feminist, and like certain words or taking out some of the more sexist language that was used like in previous decades of recent translations. She switched words around to kind of highlight like some of the misogyny in previous translations of like calling women whores and such. She's taken that out, and so it kind of opens up a different area of the text than before. And that's literally taking one block of ancient Greek and then somehow is being able to get something different. So if you're then going into fiction where there's a lot that you can play around with, like there's so much you can do with that, even though it's like the same like lump of clay. You can fashion a beautiful different model out of it.
I know, that's like what I was going to say as well with a lot of the retellings these days, is that there's a lot of like feminist ones, or the ones that focus on the female characters. And when I recently watched one of Jean's videos on if you're trying to get into myth retellings, this is what I would like recommend. And there was one, I think, is it the Margaret Atwood one, possibly?
The Penelopead?
Yeah, is Medusa in that? No. Oh, but well, there was one where she talked about how I don't know, someone who has always been portrayed in a certain way as like being evil and this, that, and the other. And then Jean explained that actually the origin of her story is that she was basically raped by someone, and then that is why she does the things, that she does. And I was like, well, I never knew that. No one had ever told me that. You're just told one perspective of this like character story and not the whole thing. So yeah, I find that very interesting. And obviously, like a lot of the Silence of the Girls and like Cersei, they're all like sort of the feminist take on it, which is really cool. So
yeah, I guess it all plays into like it being sort of applicable to like society today and stuff, which probably leads on quite nicely to the other question that I had, which wasn't what I had at number 4 on the list originally, but we can move it up because I feel like it leads on. So that was myths are often called timeless for their insights into human behaviour. What parallels do you see between the characters and conflicts of this novel and sort of what's relevant to today? And are any pieces of the story something that, we think is like universal, timeless? And I guess how much of that is in like the retelling, like what we've just been talking about.
Bro culture is the worst, and it is toxic.
Love
toxic
that.
Masculinity, gotta die.
Yeah.
That is my one.
Timeless toxic masculinity, always there.
They're being dickheads in 6,000 BC, and they're dickheads.
Yeah. Okay. I can't really think. My brain sort of like stopped working. But I think like what Charlotte said before, and for the last question with the new translations and stuff, and then what you can take from that, and then sort of making that what's the word, relevant to the discussions that we have today, sort of like about like sexism and all of the other sort of themes as well. I think there is a lot to take from them, if that makes sense. I think my brain's hit that time of the evening where it's like words.
No, I know what you mean. I guess also like the idea of someone just being like an outcast or whatever, because that's when they're at the I don't even know what it was, Achilles' dad with all the like boys that he like takes in. Patroclus is always like the sort of outsider in that, and I think the way he was feeling then, I think that's probably something that is quite relatable, something that a lot of people have probably like experienced, sort of regardless of what time period it is. And I think the like story, a love story is a love story, isn't it? It's like a lot of those emotions. I think like we were talking about it similarly with like Pride and Prejudice, like a lot of the sort of emotions and the reactions that people have in those situations are like very similar and very recognizable like throughout history.
And again, one thing I don't think we've really touched on, like a lot of their relationship is played out through obviously how they think they can and can't be around other people, and how they're going to be seen by other people, for just loving each other as well, is obviously still very relevant today, so, unfortunately.
I think.
Okay, the last question was, I've seen that I've written on my list green heroes, which is not what I meant.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I was like, what did she mean by that?
Meg Greek, obviously. There are many Greek heroes in this book. Who would you say is portrayed as the most heroic, and what qualities do we consider to be heroic?
See, I found this kind of interesting because up until the point that I got to, I would say that none of them were particularly heroic. Well, I don't know what I would classify as a hero, but there was always certain points in the story where I was a bit like questioning people's actions and sort of being like, oh, even obviously like Achilles with the way that he treated, I've forgotten her name now, the one that
yeah
and yeah, I don't know. So for me, I think like being a hero plays into like decision making as well, not just, I don't know. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I think they had like elements of being heroic, but I also think like, to me, an element of being a hero or whatever, it probably contrasts with what like would have been seen heroic at the time, because I guess that would have been a lot about like strength and leadership and that sort of thing.
And masculinity, I would say, is also a big one.
But for me, I would think like being a bit like selfless, perhaps. And I think like Achilles and Patroclus, I think you could see them both as heroic in certain things that they do, but then I do think that those things are also sort of driven by like, they're very like self-motivated decisions that some of them that they make, like the ending, like Patroclus like taking Achilles' place and stuff, and obviously he like kills someone important, doesn't he, at the end, near the end as well?
Achilles.
Patroclus, doesn't he like kill someone when he's pretending to be Achilles?
Right, yeah.
I think
I've forgotten who it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because he's in that kind of like headspace of
yeah. And I feel like that whole thing could be seen as like very like brave, because it's so like different how he's portrayed the rest of the book, and quite heroic, but then at the same time it's like you are doing that for yourself at the core. And then with Achilles, like I really liked him until the bit with the whole thing with like Briseis, and he was just like, nah, I don't care about her, and I was like, yeah, that's very heroic. But
yeah, I think I think the whole book is like, being a hero is not all it's cracked up to be, and that kind of image of this strong, amazing fighter, you know, everybody fears him, is not all it's cracked up to be. And I think for me, the most heroic person in it is Patroclus, and it's not because of his fighting, it's because he has more of an impact on the entire camp. And the bit that always comes to mind for me is, so he starts working in the medical tent, and over the years, because so many people have to come to the medical tent for different reasons, even if it's not like injuries, even if it's just like being checked over to make sure that they're okay, he learns so much about all of the army, that he knows everybody's name and everybody knows him, because he has a much deeper connection with everybody in the army than Achilles does. And there's this section in the book where everybody's saying hello to Patroclus, and he's like calling them by name, and Achilles doesn't know who any of these people are. And I think there's a line where he's kind of like, oh, you know all of these people, they all look the same to me. And Patroclus is like, well, yeah, when you're treating people every day, when you're like taking arrows out of their bodies, you do learn who they are. And he's trying to point out different people and how he knows them. And Achilles just kind of shrugs it off, and he says, it's much easier if they just remember my name. So he's very dismissive of people outside of his immediate circle.
Yeah, I was getting vibes of that towards the middle, and I think that's another reason why I was a bit sort of like, I want to like you both, but this is annoying me now. But I would say from the beginning, he does come across like Patroclus comes across as the more, I would say, heroic, even though it's a bit strange because you start off with him and he kills someone right at the beginning. And so, but even when that happens, for me, I didn't see him, I don't know, as like a bad person or anything from doing
like, it distresses him. It distresses him that he's done that.
carries like with him. There's not a moment up until the middle as well. It keeps coming up in conversation, and you can tell that he is always regretful for that action that he has, has done. So.
Yeah, I think with the way like Achilles acts, like we've been saying about like sort of disregard for other people and that sort of thing, I am glad that, because that really annoyed me as well. I'm glad that like Patroclus had that moment where he was like, he sort of went against him and he was like, he's wrong. He actually said like he is wrong in this instance. I can't remember why. Was that to do with Briseis? Like when he went to try and rescue her?
Oh yes, I remember that as well.
Yeah. I really liked that. I liked that it wasn't just him like.
Yeah, because he could have been really selfish in that and sort of been like, oh, and jealous and all that stuff. But you can tell that he's the one. He's like the moral compass. He knows what is sort of like right and wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I love a moral compass. They're like my favorite characters.
Definitely. No, I do think Patroclus was definitely the most heroic. But there were a few things that, But I guess with Achilles as well, like, isn't it a thing with like, this might be wrong, but isn't like the fatal flaw? Isn't that a thing? I guess that could be like his, and it ultimately is sort of what does end up killing him almost, because if he hadn't been acting the way he was acting, then Patroclus would never have, pretended to be him. He wouldn't have died. Then it's all like a chain. So in a like twisted way, like, interesting.
Was that all of the questions?
Yes.
Because there was one other thing I wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
If that's okay. So my biggest issue, I think, with the book was the writing. I just thought, because as well, I think obviously everyone gives it 5 stars. It's a much loved book, so going into it, I had really high expectations, which I think also didn't help. But I did find the writing very basic, and I do feel like if it was maybe a bit more, if it had a bit more substance, I would have maybe carried on with it or been more inclined to carry on with it. Obviously, I do love the way she wrote the relationship aspect. That was done really well, but the writing in itself, for me, I just kind of thought, for a book that is loved so much, I just thought it was a bit or like meh. I don't really know.
It's probably why I like it.
Yeah, it's strange though, because I normally quite like well-written books that are written in a sort of a plain way, is kind of how I would describe it. But I don't know, it just wasn't doing it for me, and I don't know why.
Yeah,
I'll try again though.
Yeah, I really liked the writing style. I think it was one of the things that I liked like the most about it, which is funny. But I think maybe like what I was saying at the beginning, that I really wasn't expecting to like it, and I think that is because I didn't think I was going to understand it. I think I often think of like stories, like historical sort of books about topics that I don't really know that much about. I think that they're going to be like really complex or dense, and I'm just not going to have a clue what's going on. So when I like read the first chapter, I was like, oh, okay, I actually get this. And I think that really helped. So I didn't.
But that's
really
such a good thing, because she is making it like really accessible to people. Like we touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
And it's weird because at the beginning, I kind of feel like I was enjoying it, and I was like, oh yeah, no, I like this. But there was something, I got to a point, and I don't know. I think it was the whole thing with Briseis when that happened. I think that, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely a slow decline for me, and I was just like less inclined to pick it up. But now, knowing more about it, I might be more persuaded to reread it and hopefully enjoy it.
Because I do hear people say that they find pacing issues with like parts of like from halfway to near the ending. But for me, I kind of write off the pacing, because I feel like it's meant to slow down, and you're meant to feel dragging because they're feeling the war dragging on. In terms of the writing, for me, I do not like. I get really irritated by anything that is really flowery. So I think my peak is Dorian Gray. Like, I find the writing in that beautiful. Spoiler for when we talk about that. But I feel like if it was any more, I would be like, who are you trying to prove? Whereas I feel like this, for me, it's like quite nicely in the middle between it being like very basic, stripped down, and being on that like flowery level. And like I think she doesn't go. She I feel like she modernizes things to a level where it's accessible, but not so modernized that you're taken out of it, which I think is something that people have an issue with. Talking about Silence of the Girls again, is because Pat Barker really modernizes the language. So there's a lot of like, Achilles being like,
hey bro,
lads, she'll do, lads.
Love that.
And you're just kind of like, all right. And that can be a bit, and I think that's a bit jarring for some people. So Madeline Miller doesn't do that. It still feels like off the time that kind of.
And you can definitely
it feels somehow historical, even though it's written now.
And the setting, like the I would say it was easy to picture the setting, but I think the thing I struggled with the most, because there's so many side characters in it and they've all got these names, it was difficult for me to work out who was who, because I was expecting a sort of more of a physical description maybe of them, a more in-depth description of all of these people, but that's not the point of the story. So I do find it interesting, because for me, I feel like I could pick it up without knowing the characters beforehand and feel like she is explaining enough for me to go on, but I don't know, because that's not how I'm reading it. See, I think it's because I'm in that weird, like I say, that middle thing, because I've recently got into it and I found them interesting, but it's been long enough that I've actually forgotten who all these people are, and I know all of the names and some of the stories, that reading it I kind of felt a bit like I know the names but I've completely forgotten who this person is, so it was a bit weird.
Because I have read Greek myth retellings where they have kind of, I feel like Ariadne did this, where they'd basically stop and be like, this is this person, and it's really distracting.
Oh, is it?
And I'm
I
just
feel like I would like that.
or they'll try and weave in the story of somebody and it feels really fake, and it's like nobody would have this conversation. No one would be like, this is it.
I don't think it needs all of that, because it's like, if you were reading like another book, if this was just like a fantasy book or just like a historical, not even historical, if it's just a story like purely fiction and didn't have like the history of like the Greek myths and stuff behind it, then you wouldn't expect there to be like a full backstory on every single character. So I thought that there was like enough woven in on each, and it left you like interested in, or at least me, like interested enough to like want to know more and read more about the characters that I liked in it. So
I think as well, I've been spoiled, because the two retellings that are like really obvious retellings I've read are both Jeanette Winterson retellings. So one was a Shakespeare and the other one was Wait, which is about Atlas. And at the beginning there's like 2 pages where she kind of just, it gives you the synopsis of the Shakespeare play. For the Winter's Tale, she like gives you the whole synopsis of the play. And then for Atlas, I would think, or am I making this up? I'm pretty sure there's like an introduction bit where she explains Atlas was told by this person to do this and blah blah blah. So you know the characters involved and you know where the story is at, because she's already explained that to you, and that really helped. So I think maybe I felt like I was kind of missing that.
You just reminded me that there's a foreword at the beginning of the 10th anniversary edition, so like it's new to this edition from Madeline Miller. Didn't actually read it. So,
I love that. You just like pointed that out to be like, I didn't read it.
I should have done. I was like, that was one of the things I was excited about, but I feel like I just went straight into the book. Like, hello, my old friend. I'm sure it's great because I like what she writes.
Yeah.
Are you interested to read Circe?
Do you know what? When I was reading it, I was messaging Shah and Sylvie because it's Sylvie's one of her favourite books. So I was like, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to DNF it. I don't.
Sylvie actually made that. She didn't make me reread it, but she is the reason that I originally reread it because she loved it so much.
Yeah, and then what was I going to say? And then I was kind of thinking, I don't know why, but in the back of my head, it was when we were book shopping in London, and I was like, oh, I'm not liking it. I'm really sorry. No. And then I was like, I don't know why, but I get this feeling that I might enjoy Circe more. And she did say, oh, I get that. I actually I can see that with you. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I can see you liking that.
Who love the Song of Achilles really didn't like Circe and said that the writing was poor and this, that, and the other. I'm talking about Kieran.
Oh.
Yeah. I remember it coming up in one of our like sprints. There was a discussion on it, I think, and he said that he didn't like it. Or he gave it 3 stars or something.
Oh. No, because I would say that my favourite is Song of Achilles out of the two, but I think they're both fantastic. Just this one just is nudged into my heart a little bit more. But no, I can see you really getting on with it. And Karis.
I definitely want to read it.
I think there's a lot that's like very relatable, and you can kind of feel like, yeah, I want to be isolated on an island just doing magic. That sounds fab.
Yeah, see, it's weird. It didn't put me off like thinking about picking up Circe, for instance. So it wasn't all bad. I think it might have just been a combination of things. And when I fixed those combinations and reread it, I could enjoy it a lot more. So. But it's interesting, obviously discussing it with you, like, has made me want to read it, like, to finish it off, if that makes sense. So yeah,
I can go home now.
Charlotte's mission.
I can sleep. Sleep tonight.
I did not come here to bully you into.
Well, at least I love Pride and Prejudice, so
yeah,
I have a green card for that. It's like I may pass go, or
my heart was so
free card.
I was so happy when you messaged me to say that you were enjoying Pride and Prejudice.
I'm already thinking about rereading it, which is ridiculous. It's just like, you know, when you need that joy in your life, and you just know you're going to get it from that book.
Oh yeah.
We should definitely do a trip to see Pride and Prejudice, sort of, because I saw it.
Yes.
I would definitely.
I saw it. Loads of people are saying it's really good.
Yeah, it was really good. I would see it again, and it's so pretty. Like the set is like pink and just So yeah.
I was outside the theatre.
It's pretty outside as well, isn't it? They've put like feathers on like the statues outside.
It's right near Regent Street, which is like a very beautiful street at Christmas anyway.
I think I saw it. Wait, isn't it in Piccadilly? Yeah, because the last time I was there, I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, look, it's there." I didn't know it was there.
No, I think they've extended it. So in the new year, definitely we should.
Yeah, we should.
Is it still on? Still on there?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think it was meant to be on until February, but I'm pretty sure they've like extended it. But yeah, even if it's February, we can
do it.
Time. Definitely, that's exciting. Cool. Well, thank you very much for hosting and discussing. It was, like I say, interesting. And obviously tomorrow we're doing back to back. Woo! Myself,
I've completely failed, so I won't be there. But
myself and Charlotte will be discussing. Is it the first one that we all have already read?
I think so.
The first book we've all
Yeah,
already read.
I
Yeah.
have already read it, but I don't feel like I remember it enough to like
No, that's fair
come
enough.
and
Yeah.
discuss it with you, because I'd just be like, there's a painting.
He's called Dorian.
But
He has a picture.
it was one of my favorite books that I did at uni. I remember I really liked it. So at some point I will reread it and watch your guys' discussion on it.
So yes, that will be on my channel tomorrow at 7:30, and we'll be discussing The Picture of Dorian Gray. Yay!
And then we're going to be all caught up to start
I
reading.
know, I'm so
Addie.
excited for that. I'm literally going to start reading Addie LaRue. I'm going to like divide it up and make sure I get it finished in time. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an effort.
I mean,
with
I
it.
actually haven't finished this yet. I'm halfway through, but I'm going to stay up tonight to finish it because I don't like.
I actually did it in a day, and I was
needed.
quite impressed with myself.
I could have done if I had a day or a weekend to myself. I could have binge read it, but yeah, the reason why I want to finish it is the ending. I just need to get to that point because it's like the best thing ever. So yeah, very excited.
Oh, thanks so much, guys.
So
I hope you have.
If anyone wants to join and watch, that's tomorrow on Shannon's channel. And then as Charlotte said, we're reading Addie LaRue in December. So we'll probably talk about it in January at some point now.
I'm so glad that this is another book that I have read, because December is so busy. It needed to be a book I at least knew.
Yeah, I think I'll have some time like over that Christmas period, like when I'm back at my parents, to get round to it. But I am going to start on it like pretty soon in December. So because I keep every time I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start it straight away, and then
I did that with the Song of Achilles, and it just did not work.
But no. Well, cool. It's been lovely again, and I will try and watch tomorrow so I can still see you. But yeah, I will speak to you soon, and thank you to anyone who's watched or is watching in the future. Cool.
Have a lovely evening.
Yeah.
Bye.